had planned this hike for months, a solo trip through the dense backcountry, far from crowded trails and noisy tourists. Just me, the wilderness, and miles of untouched land. It was supposed to be a challenge, but nothing I hadn't handled before. I had my gear, a map, a satellite phone, and enough supplies to last me at least a week. I had done my research. I had checked the weather. I had even left my itinerary with a friend, just in case. Everything was set. The first couple of days were perfect. The air was crisp, and the scent of pine and damp earth filled my lungs. The trail was steep in some areas, but I had trained for this. I knew how to pace myself. I stopped only when I needed to, setting up camp near streams and making sure to keep my food secured from animals. The nights were eerily quiet, save for the occasional rustling in the bushes. It was peaceful. By the third day, I was deep into the forest, far from any marked trails. This was where the real adventure began. The further I went, the less I saw any signs of people. No footprints, no old campfires, no wrappers left behind by careless hikers. Felt untouched, exactly what I wanted. Then, things started to feel off. It was small at first, the feeling, like I wasn't alone, like something was just beyond my sight, watching. I tried to ignore it. It wasn't unusual to get paranoid out here, especially alone. The mind plays tricks on you. I chalked it up to exhaustion and kept moving. But the feeling never left. If anything, it got stronger. Then I started noticing other things. Subtle but unmistakable. A snapped branch here. A rock that had been moved. Small, almost imperceptible changes in the environment that I was sure weren't there before. I told myself it was animals. Maybe a deer, maybe a bear. I had seen tracks earlier in the day, though none seemed fresh. Still, I kept my guard up. That night, I set up camp near a stream. I was careful to keep my fire small and my food away from my tent. As I sat by the fire, eating, I heard something. A soft shuffle in the distance. Not an animal. Animals moved with purpose. Quick, sometimes clumsy, but never hesitant. This was different. It was slow, deliberate. I held my breath, listening. The sound stopped. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a falling branch, maybe my imagination. I crawled into my tent and forced myself to sleep. I woke up suddenly. I didn't know why at first. The fire had died out, and everything was silent. Too silent. Even the usual nighttime noises, crickets, the distant hoots of an owl were gone. Then I heard it, breathing, close, just outside my tent. I didn't move. I barely even breathed. My mind raced through possibilities. A bear? A mountain lion? But the breathing was too steady, too controlled. Not the huffing of an animal. I felt my heart pounding in my chest. I reached for the knife in my pack, gripping it tight. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the breathing stopped. I stayed awake for the rest of the night, listening, waiting, but nothing happened. When the first light of dawn came, I unzipped my tent slowly and looked around. Nothing was disturbed. No tracks. No signs that anything had been there. But I knew I hadn't imagined it. I packed up quickly and decided to move on. I told myself I was being paranoid, but I also knew I needed to be cautious. I decided to alter my route, take a less direct path back, just to be safe. The next day was uneventful. The paranoia lingered, but I didn't see or hear anything unusual. Maybe I had scared myself too much. Maybe the isolation was getting to me. Then, on the fifth day, I found something that sent a chill through me. A boot print. Fresh, but wrong. It wasn't mine. And it wasn't from any modern hiking boot I'd ever seen. It was old, worn down like something out of another time. The tread was almost smooth, and the edges were frayed. Someone else was out here. I scanned the area, looking for more prints, but there was only the one. I listened. Nothing. But that feeling was back. Stronger. I wasn't alone. I kept moving. Faster now. Less cautious about making noise, more concerned about getting back to civilization. I checked my map, planned the quickest route back to the closest road. It would take me another 2 days, maybe less if I pushed hard. That night, I didn't light a fire. I ate quickly and stayed awake, listening. I kept my knife close, my pack ready to grab at a moment's notice. And then, just before dawn, I heard it again. Footsteps, not heavy, not rushed, just slow, steady. Someone was walking near my camp. I didn't move. I barely even breathed. The footsteps circled, then stopped. Minutes passed, then an hour. Nothing. When daylight came, I found another boot print. This time, closer. I moved fast that day, barely stopping to eat, only drinking when I had to. My legs burned, my body ached, but I didn't care. I had to get out. The forest that had once felt peaceful now felt suffocating. Every tree, every shadow felt like a hiding place. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. By the time I reached the road, I was exhausted. My body was running on pure adrenaline. I had never been so relieved to see pavement in my life. I didn't stop walking until I found a car passing by, a couple on their way to another trailhead. They stopped when they saw me, asked if I was okay. I nodded, said I was fine, just a little lost. I never told them what really happened. I never told anyone, because I knew what they would say, that I had imagined it, that I had let the isolation get to me. But I know what I heard, I know what I saw, and I know that whoever was out there, they let me leave, this time. I started early that morning, before the sun had fully risen, before the world was awake. The forest was still, except for the occasional rustling of unseen creatures moving through the underbrush. The air was crisp, the kind that wakes you up better than a cup of coffee. I adjusted the straps on my pack and took my first step onto the trail. The hike was supposed to be a long one, a remote, winding path through the mountains that few people bothered to take. That was part of the appeal. No crowds, no distractions, just me and the wilderness. I had done my research, mapped out the route, packed everything I needed: extra water, a first aid kit, a knife, a fire starter, and enough food to last me for a couple of days if needed. My phone was fully charged, though I knew service would be non-existent for most of the hike. The first few miles were peaceful. The scent of pine filled the air, the sound of my boots crunching against the dirt path the only noise around. Birds occasionally called out, but for the most part, the forest was quiet. I liked it that way. It felt like I had left the rest of the world behind. As the hours passed, the trail began to change. It grew steeper, rockier. The trees became denser, their branches intertwining above me, blocking out the sunlight. The deeper I went, the more isolated it felt. I hadn't seen another person since I started, and by now I was certain I wouldn't. Around midday, I stopped to rest. I found a flat rock near a small stream and sat down, pulling out some food. As I ate, I listened to the sound of the water trickling over the rocks. It was soothing. Then I heard something else. It was faint at first, almost blending in with the natural sounds of the forest. But as I sat still, I noticed it. A steady, rhythmic thumping. It didn't belong. I turned my head, trying to pinpoint where it was coming from, but it seemed to be echoing all around me. I held my breath, listening harder. Then it stopped. The silence that followed was unsettling. The forest had gone completely still. No birds, no rustling leaves, just dead air. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to shake it off. Maybe it was a deer moving through the trees, its hooves thudding against the ground. Maybe it was just my own heartbeat, amplified in the quiet. I packed up my things and continued on. The further I went, the stranger I felt. The path twisted in ways I didn't remember seeing on the map. The trees felt closer, their trunks looming over me. The air felt different, heavier somehow. Every now and then, I thought I heard something. A distant crunch of leaves, a faint rustling behind me. But every time I stopped to listen, it was gone. I kept moving. An hour later, I found something odd. A shoe lying just off the trail. It was old, covered in dirt and moss, but it hadn't been there long enough to be completely swallowed by the forest. I frowned, nudging it with my boot. It was small, a child's shoe. There shouldn't have been a child out here. I looked around, suddenly feeling exposed. The forest stretched endlessly in all directions. There was no sign of anyone, no footprints, no discarded items, nothing. I took a deep breath and walked on, my pace a little faster now. After another hour, I realized something was wrong. The path should have started curving back by now, leading me towards the peak before looping down the other side. But it hadn't. Instead, it seemed to go deeper and deeper into the woods, the trees growing thicker, the ground uneven and wild. My map didn't match what I was seeing. I stopped, pulling out my phone. No service. Of course. I tried to retrace my steps, but somehow, the path behind me looked different. Had I really strayed this far off course? I took a few careful steps back, scanning the trees for anything familiar. That's when I saw it. A figure, deep in the woods, barely visible between the trees. I froze. My brain struggled to make sense of it. It wasn't an animal. It was tall, unmoving, person, standing completely still, watching me. My stomach turned to ice. My instincts screamed at me to move, to run, but my legs wouldn't work. I blinked, and in that fraction of a second, the figure was gone. I spun around, heart pounding, scanning the trees. Nothing, just the dense, dark forest stretching in all directions. I needed to leave. Now, I turned and walked as fast as I could without running, forcing myself to stay calm. Running would be stupid. Running meant panic, and panic meant mistakes. I needed to find my way back, needed to get out of these woods before the sun went down. The path twisted and turned, and no matter how far I went, nothing looked familiar. The trees pressed in closer, the air growing thick. I was sweating now, my breath coming fast. My footsteps sounded too loud, the only noise in the suffocating silence. Then, just as the sun began to dip behind the trees, I saw it, a clearing up ahead. I practically sprinted towards it, bursting out of the dense forest into the open. Relief flooded through me until I saw where I was. The stream, the flat rock, the same place I had stopped to eat hours ago. I had been walking in circles. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't possible. I had been careful, deliberate. How had I ended up back here? And then, as I stood there trying to make sense of it, I heard it again. The rhythmic thumping. Closer this time. Much closer. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my pack and ran. I didn't care about the path anymore. Didn't care if I got scratched up by the branches or twisted an ankle on the uneven ground. I just needed to get out. The sound followed me. A steady, pounding rhythm, keeping pace with me, never falling behind. My lungs burned. My legs ached. But I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. And then, finally, I saw something ahead. A break in the trees. A dirt road. My car. I stumbled towards it, yanking open the door, throwing myself inside and slamming the lock down. My hands shook as I fumbled with the keys, jamming them into the ignition. The engine roared to life. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was miles away, speeding down the winding road back to civilization. I still don't know what happened that day. Maybe I got turned around. Maybe my mind played tricks on me. But I know what I heard, and I know I wasn't alone out there. I haven't gone hiking since. I remember the moment I stepped onto the trail. It was early morning, the sky a dull gray, the air thick with the smell of damp earth. I had planned this solo hike for weeks. I needed the space, the quiet. Life had been too loud lately, and I wanted something to remind me of who I was before the noise took over. The trail was an old one, barely maintained, winding deep into the mountains. It wasn't one of the well-known paths, and that was the appeal. I wanted solitude. I wanted to be out there, just me and the wilderness. I had packed carefully, enough water, food, my tent, a flashlight, a map. I had my phone, but I knew reception would be spotty at best. That was fine. I wasn't planning on needing it. The first few hours were uneventful. The forest was thick, the path narrow, barely more than a deer trail in some places. The quiet was almost unnatural. No birds, no rustling leaves, just the crunch of my boots on damp earth. I should have taken that as a sign, but I didn't. By midday, I reached a small clearing. I took a break, drank some water, and checked my map. I was making good time. If I kept going, I'd reach a good campsite before sundown. I felt good, strong. The weight of my pack sat right, and my legs weren't sore yet. I had done plenty of solo hikes before, but something about this one felt different. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was how the trees seemed taller, the shadows darker. I pushed the thought aside and kept moving. The trail got steeper. My breath came heavier, sweat rolling down my back. The sky had turned a darker gray, thick clouds hanging low. The air smelled like rain. I quickened my pace, hoping to set up camp before the storm hit. My map showed a small plateau not too far ahead. It would be a good spot. I just had to get there. Then, I noticed the footprints. At first, I thought they were mine, but as I crouched down, I saw they were bigger, wider. Someone had come this way recently. That wasn't necessarily strange, but something about them put me on edge. They were deep, heavier than normal steps. Whoever made them was either carrying something heavy or was much larger than me. I told myself it didn't matter. People used trails. It wasn't like I was the only one who knew about this place. Still, I walked faster. By the time I reached the plateau, the wind had picked up. The sky was almost black now, thick clouds rolling fast. I set up my tent in a hurry, my hands moving on instinct. I got a fire going, but the wood was damp, and it smoked more than it burned. The smell mixed with the sharp scent of incoming rain. I sat on a rock, eating a protein bar, listening to the wind. Then I heard it, a sound I couldn't place. Not the wind, not an animal. It was distant, but sharp, cutting through the silence. A crunch, like something stepping on brittle wood. I turned, staring into the trees. I saw nothing, but my gut told me something was there. I stood, my muscles tensed. The wind howled through the trees, branches swaying wildly. Another crunch, closer this time. My breath came fast. I wasn't armed. A pocket knife wasn't going to do much against a threat I couldn't see. I reached for my flashlight, flicking it on. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating trees, rocks, empty spaces. Nothing, but I knew. I wasn't alone. Then the rain came, hard, fast, drenching everything in seconds. My fire hissed out, smoke curling into the air before disappearing. I backed toward my tent, the flashlight shaking in my grip. I scanned the trees one last time before ducking inside, zipping it shut. I felt stupid, paranoid, but the feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. I lay there listening. The rain pounded against the fabric, the wind making the tent shudder. My breathing was loud in the small space. I told myself I was safe. No one was out here. It was just my mind playing tricks. But I knew that wasn't true. Sometime in the night, I woke up. My skin was cold, my heart pounding. I didn't know why. Then I heard it, a dragging sound, slow, deliberate, right outside my tent. My throat went dry, my muscles locked up. I held my breath, listening. The sound stopped. Silence. Then, a whisper. Not words, just air moving through something, right by my tent. I gripped my flashlight so tight my fingers ached. I wanted to turn it on, but I didn't want to see. I didn't want to know what was out there. Then, a thud, heavy, like something dropping right outside my tent. My stomach flipped. I couldn't move, couldn't think. I just lay there, frozen, waiting. Minutes passed, then an hour, then two. The storm raged on, but nothing else happened. Eventually, exhaustion won. I don't remember falling asleep. Morning came too slow. The light filtering through my tent felt unreal, too soft. I sat up, my body stiff. My mind was slow, clouded. For a moment, I convinced myself I had imagined it all. Then I unzipped the tent. The ground outside was disturbed. Deep prints in the mud, leading from the tree line to where my tent stood. But worse was what lay in front of me. A deer, or what was left of one. His body torn open, ribs exposed. Blood soaked the ground, mixing with the rain. But that wasn't what made my stomach turn. It was the head. It was placed upright, facing my tent. Eyes gone, mouth slightly open, like it had been set there deliberately. I packed my things in minutes. My hands shook, my breath ragged. I didn't eat, didn't think. I just moved. I needed to get out. I needed to be far from whatever had done that. The hike back was a blur. My legs burned, my lungs ached, but I didn't stop. I didn't rest. The whole time I felt watched. Not by animals, not by something natural, something else. I never looked back. By the time I reached my car, my body was screaming for rest. I didn't listen. I threw my pack in, got in the driver's seat, and sped down the dirt road, not stopping until I hit pavement. I never reported it. Who would believe me? An animal attack, maybe, but that whisper, that deliberate placement. No, I wasn't meant to find that place, and I sure as hell wasn't meant to be there alone. I haven't gone hiking alone since, and I don't think I ever will again. I always liked hiking alone. Something about being away from the noise of everyday life made me feel like I could breathe. The woods have a way of swallowing everything: voices, stress, even time itself. I never thought they could swallow me too. It started as a simple day hike. I had planned it a week in advance, checking the weather and making sure I had everything I needed. Water, extra socks, a small first aid kit, a flashlight, and some granola bars. I was familiar with the trail, at least I thought I was. It wasn't a popular one, which I liked. No crowds, no distractions, just me and the sound of my boots crunching against dirt and leaves. The morning was crisp. The air smelled like pine and damp earth, a mix that always made me feel grounded. I parked my car at the small, nearly empty lot near the trailhead. An old wooden sign, weathered and covered in moss, marked the start of the path. I tightened my pack straps, adjusted my boots, and set off. The first few miles were peaceful. The sun filtered through the trees in golden streaks. Birds chirped somewhere above, and the occasional squirrel darted across the path. I took my time, stopping to take pictures of the scenery, feeling the rough bark of trees as I passed, enjoying the cool air against my skin. Then I saw the fork. I had studied the map before coming here, and I didn't remember there being a fork in the trail. The path I had been on was well trodden, but this new one looked different, narrower, the dirt less compacted, almost as if it hadn't been used much. I stood there for a moment, staring at the two paths, the one I knew and the one that seemed forgotten. Curiosity tugged at me. I checked my phone's GPS, but of course I had no signal. I pulled out the paper map I had packed just in case. No sign of the fork. It wasn't a smart decision, but something about that path pulled me in. Maybe it was the way the trees arched over it, forming a tunnel of green and shadow, or maybe it was just the thrill of the unknown. Either way, I took it. The deeper I went, the quieter it became. The birds had stopped singing. The rustling leaves had gone still. Even my own footsteps sounded muffled, like the ground was swallowing the noise. The trees grew closer together, their twisted roots clawing through the earth like fingers. After a while, I realized I hadn't seen any trail markers. Normally, there'd be something, ribbons tied to trees, painted blazes on the bark. But here there was nothing, just the unbroken stretch of path winding deeper into the woods. I told myself I'd turn back soon. I wasn't lost, not yet. The sun was still high, and I had plenty of time before dark. But when I glanced behind me, the path I had taken looked different. It wasn't as clear, as if the forest had begun erasing my footprints the moment I passed. Something wasn't right. I picked up my pace, my heartbeat drumming in my ears. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see something there. But there was nothing, just trees and silence. I kept walking, trying to retrace my steps, but the more I walked, the less familiar everything seemed. Then I saw it, a shoe. It was half buried in the dirt, covered in leaves and mud. A hiking boot, much like mine but older, more worn. And next to it, something that made my stomach twist. A torn scrap of fabric stuck to a branch, fluttering slightly in the still air. I wasn't alone, or at least I hadn't been. Someone else had come this way before, and they hadn't made it out. I fought the panic rising in my chest. I needed to stay calm. Think. I pulled out my compass, but the needle spun wildly, refusing to settle. My hands started to shake as I shoved it back into my pack. I turned in a slow circle, trying to find anything familiar, but everything looked the same. And then the smell hit me. It was faint at first, a sour, rotting scent that crept into my nose and clung to the back of my throat. I swallowed hard, trying to ignore it, but with every step I took, it grew stronger. I didn't want to know what it was, but some part of me already did. I forced myself to keep moving, to ignore the feeling of unseen eyes watching me from the trees. My breath came in short gasps, and every step felt heavier, like the ground was trying to pull me down. I don't know how long I walked, but eventually, the trees began to thin. I could see light filtering through, brighter than before. I pushed forward, nearly running now, desperate to get out. And then, just like that, I was back on the main trail. I stumbled forward, gasping for air, the open space around me feeling unreal. I turned back, expecting to see the fork where I had made my mistake, but there was nothing, just the unbroken line of the path stretching behind me. The narrow, twisted trail I had followed was gone. I didn't stop. I walked faster, then ran, not stopping until I saw my car in the distance. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock the door. When I finally sat inside, slamming the door shut, I forced myself to breathe, to think. I looked at my map again, tracing the route I had planned. There had been no fork, no other trail. I should have been lost for hours, but when I checked the time, only 40 minutes had passed since I first stepped off the main path. I started the engine, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I didn't look back as I drove away. I haven't hiked alone since,